Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Orange Zone podcast. I'm Tommy Sladek. We have Ashley Wenskoski, and we have Rachel Culver on the producer mic. Today, we are continuing our position group preview for this highly anticipated Syracuse football 2024 season, and today is all about the offensive line. But first, Rachel's back from vacation. How was it, Rach? You feeling good?
I'm feeling rejuvenated. I'm feeling great. I was in Nashville for a little bit, so got my Tennessee on. But now we're back in Central New York, and I'm happy to be back.
Well, we're glad to have you back. And before we get into the O-line, where we're going to go with really what we expect to be the starting five, but a bunch of names, because this is one of the positions, if not the position, that still has a number of question marks on it. And we'll look to try to get some answers here as we get our discussion going. But there are some housekeeping things. You want to hit it?
Couple housekeeping items this week. First of all, the blue seats at the Dome. We saw a bunch of pictures just today. They were having something else in there today, not sports related, but pretty much done. They look really good. One of my hottest takes is that I think the blue seats was the right choice.
I completely agree with you on that. And I think at the end of the day, it's just it's going to look so good. It really will.
So good. I think orange would have looked obnoxious. Sorry. Secondly, Syracuse football's 2024 roster officially made pretty much live online today. Couple things. Braden Davis was a backup quarterback. He's officially listed as a receiver. We saw some number things. We saw some freshmen wearing some single digits. Incoming quarterback Jakari Williams, number 4. I think that has to be pretty promising in terms of how the staff looks at him. Tight end Jamie Tremble, one of their highest recruits in this year's class. He's going to wear number 13. And transfers, this is kind of crazy, make up almost 40% of the roster this year. Isn't that wild?
That's nuts. It really is. And then the transfer, or the junior senior, wait, hold on. Transfer, you said transfers?
Yeah.
40%? And then half the roster is junior and seniors?
Half the roster almost. And they only had 6 seniors last year. So this is an older team. Definitely.
I think it's going to be the new standard too, and we've already started seeing that for basketball and the teams that were really successful in March Madness. As you look at that starting five, and it was redshirt senior, redshirt junior, and so I think that's just going to happen with the nature of the transfer portal. Another few notes was just seeing some of the names that didn't enroll early, that were freshmen that are coming in, that are very highly touted, and then some specific names that's just cool to see, and that is we have 2 father-sons with the coaching staff and players. Will Nixon, running back, comes over from Washington to join the new offensive coordinator. His dad, Jeff Nixon. I said Will Nixon,
yes,
right? Okay,
yes.
jeez. I'm having short-term memory loss. It's going full Dory over here. The other is Michael Johnson Jr., so he is the son of the tight ends coach, Michael Johnson, who was receivers coach last year, also co-OC, and quarterback. So he started at Penn State, then moved to FAU, and that almost explains the Braden Davis officially moving over to receiver, as you have some guys like Johnson coming in trying to make a serious case for backing up, who is a very important guy, and also a very important position in protecting him. We're referring to Kyle McCord here. We're talking about this offensive line.
Totally. And I think the one note I have on that is Will Nixon. I think that running backs room needed a little bit more depth. Obviously, you're going to have LaQuint Allen and then Yasin Willis. Really impressed in the spring behind him. So I think that's probably going to be your 1-2. But behind those 2 guys, I'm happy to see Nixon slot in there because I think they really needed someone else.
And this is the most important line of what we're talking about today, and that is there won't be a successful Kyle McCord and Orange offense without a reliable offensive line. You can't have one without the other.
I mean, that is just the story of this offseason. I feel like everybody's like, Kyle McCord, woo. And then the next thing that comes in is everyone like, how about that O-line, though? And I'm like, yeah. I think this is a group that's really going to take a lot of focus this year, obviously, with protecting McCord. Garrett Schrader was sacked 25 times last year. We saw what that did to his body. We saw the injuries that he endured. That just simply can't happen again if Syracuse is going to have a successful year under McCord. McCord is also a little bit less mobile of a quarterback than Schrader was. Schrader could escape that pocket really easily, loved to run the ball himself, and I think McCord has much less of that. He's much more of a true traditional
pocket passer, baby.
Yeah. So the O-line is more important than ever before.
Absolutely.
Corn's not a guy you're going to want to see become a decoy like we saw Schrader last year.
No.
Can't
no
be
more
having
decoys.
That. Can't be having that. And this is all under a new O-line coach in Dale Williams. Comes in with more than 25 years of experience. He was at Louisville. He was the quality control coach. He was at Purdue with their O-line coach for 6 years. And Big Ten O-line, just, corn-fed boys. They're big. And he's a guy that he brings a lot. And from watching him in spring practice, very intense dude.
Yeah, I like his presence. I think, like you said, that Big Ten experience is definitely nothing to sneeze at. He actually played, I think all the connections in his coaching staff are really cool. Like you talked about Nixon's son, Michael Johnson's son. He played briefly with Nixon at West Virginia in the 90s, so that's cool. I just feel like half of this coaching staff with all the Camden stuff and then just with knowing each other throughout the web of college football is really interesting, all their connections.
And this is the 5th offensive line coach in the past 8 years. For some of the guys that have been with this program for like 4 to 5 years now, which is crazy, like Mark Petrie.
Yeah.
Imagine having so many new faces come in. It's not easy, and hopefully it's one of those deals where they can just quickly get to work. So looking at this O-line as a whole, they've been very injured just historically in recent years, and it's absolutely hurt them. They were ranked 86 out of 130 in sacks per game with 30 total, averaging 2.31 per game. Now, Syracuse as a whole had 95 penalties in 2023, which ranked the 12th worst in FBS. Syracuse fans are like, yeah, believe me, brother, I know. I've watched these games, and the O-line contributed to that number, just like other positions. But it's something that needs to get worked on, and 12th worst in the FBS can't be happening if you have your sights set on the highest expectations.
Yeah, I think the penalties as a whole will pretty much undoubtedly improve. I think Fran Brown's whole, thing is that that's just unacceptable. But I don't know the exact number, but we were talking before this. I think the O-line contributed so much to that issue in the last year and in the last few years. Really, I feel like it was just constantly, false start, whatever. So I think that's something that definitely could improve this group. But what I took out of this, if we're just taking a big picture look at it before we get into, one by one, the nitty gritty. This is, I have to say, I think one of the most experienced position groups on this team. I mean, you go down this list and pretty much everyone is redshirt senior, junior. I think it's one of the most older veteran groups on the team. At the same time, a lot of those older guys have either been held out because of injury or, haven't necessarily had a starting spot. So it'll be interesting while they are older to see them kind of slot into some more important roles.
And to build that chemistry quickly, to be able to work together as a unit. Because if you're trying to just look out for yourself individually on the O-line, that creates gaps, that creates issues. So these are experienced dudes, and we'll see if that experience allows them to mold as one very quickly as we get into the fall camp, which is just around the corner. I believe it might be starting up next week. So taking a look here, there is some depth. They have numbers, and you need numbers at the offensive line. These were the 5 starters from the spring game, which you can't say set in stone. That is the starters for the fall because there are some faces that have come in since that game. But we think it's important. We think there's a reason why those 5 were out there, and we're going to talk about it. And it starts with Enrique Cruz Jr. at left tackle. Then you had Jacob Bradford at left guard, John Ray Big General Reed at center, Mark Petrie right guard, and Demetrius Big Spoon Weatherspoon at right tackle. Now going down that list, Enrique's been around for a few years. Bradford's been here. Petrie's been here. Reed just got here last year but made an immediate difference. And then Weatherspoon is the only brand new player, a transfer in from Howard. He was an HBCU All-American. So let's start with Enrique Cruz Jr. because not only is he a name that's built up at a very important left tackle position, but also there's the Syracuse tailgate that has built up over the past few years and a lot, so he's becoming a known name.
Yeah, what I think is interesting, actually, out of those 5 guys that you just named, aside from Witherspoon, who you said each of them either started or appeared in every single game last year, so that does give you a bit of experience. But yeah, Cruz, 6'6", 320 pounds, started every game at left tackle last year. I think he's really poised for a big season, and I think something that's interesting that you have written here is he learned under Matthew Bergeron, a good guy to learn from.
I remember doing a story with both him and Bergeron 2 years ago, and him talking about, he's like, that's my little brother. He's like, we eat every meal together, and obviously it turns out that was a very important guy to learn under. He's now with the Falcons. We saw him at the spring game. He's doing great, and I think he's going to end up being a Pro Bowler. Love that dude.
Yeah.
Nice guy. And then as for what else sticks out right away, I mean, the size is a big thing. And Fran Brown has talked about size as being one of his big things. We hit it last week with the defensive line, and these guys just as much bring that size factor. Now, Mark Petrie's interesting at right guard because he's a name that people have seen sparingly in his first few years. He's been here since 2020. So can you imagine like how much change
he's seen a lot.
He's seen in that time. So he's from Germany, 6'4", 300. And again, he was at right guard in the spring game, redshirt senior. Played every game last year, started the final 11. He's played in 26 for the Orange. So one of the more experienced with the program itself. And then in his fifth year, played in every game last year. And very valuable veteran presence.
Yeah, for sure. John Ray Reed at center. He transferred to Syracuse from JUCO originally, started all 13 games last year. Syracuse's highest rated pass blocker, which I thought was interesting. Another guy who really brings that size, 6'3", 305, or 315, I should say. And he's a senior as well. So I'm interested to see what he does this year in kind of his second year with a really bona fide, starting role.
And that big general nickname comes from his leadership, both physically and just verbally on the field. So I love that he was able to make such a quick impact coming in last year at a very important position, which is center. And then Jacob Bradford, 6'5", redshirt senior, Minnesota native, played every game in 2023, started the first 9 games in the bowl game, 555 snaps, allowed just 4 sacks. So again, big guy, and they're big. These are big dudes.
Yeah, those 4, I honestly, the more that I go over this list, like those 4, I have some confidence in those 4. For as much as, the lines, there'll be some ins and outs and whatever, but from what we saw in the spring game, those 4, I do feel confident about.
And then last but not least on that starting 5 from the spring game, right tackle, Big Spoon. This guy's big. 6'7", 335.
I mean, 6'7", 335 is wow. Yeah, he transferred in from Howard, like you mentioned, an HBCU All-American. He started all 12 games at right tackle at Howard, and really he has 2 years of eligibility remaining, which is great, I think. And I think he's someone who could really grow into a really big role in this team, both this year and next.
And as we get into names to watching close competition, which again, I think there could definitely be some shakeup with this starting 5 come week 1. And a part of that is, again, there's guys that came in after the spring game that maybe they would have started had they been here in the winter and spring. And speaking of big guys, Savion Washington, 6'8", 340, redshirt senior, transfer from Colorado. He had offers from Texas A&M, Rutgers, and Baylor. Akron native. And Rachel, a huge basketball nut, would love this. Same high school as LeBron James, St. Mary, St. Vincent.
There you go.
Or St. Vincent, St. Mary. One of the two.
You have next to 6'8", 340, holy beep, because that is, if that doesn't sum it up, 6'8", 340, sign me up for that on,
a huge dude.
On your O-line. But previously spent 3 years at Kent State, 1 at Colorado. He, like you mentioned, didn't commit until after the spring game. But I think he has a lot of experience over that time at both Kent State and Colorado. He saw action in 660 total snaps, which is a lot. I'm excited to see what he can do purely based on his size. Even you don't have to know anything else about him, but size alone, yeah.
Big time. And Colorado, though, it is important to note that they did have a suffering offensive line last year. Deion Sanders even at one point came out and said he would be, willing to replace the whole thing if things weren't fixed up.
Blow it all up.
He's not one to mince words now, is he?
No. The Buffs, man. What a program. Man. What a change he did in that 1 year. But to keep it moving, this is a name that he was new last year. David Wallaball Jr., a redshirt junior. He played 2 games before breaking his fibula last year, which was super unfortunate because there was a lot of hype around him coming in from Kentucky. His dad played, and he ended up missing the spring with an injury. So we're going to find out where he fits, but I think it's one of those tackle spots he's going to be fighting for.
Yeah, I believe he got surgery on that fibula this offseason. My fun fact there is the rumors was that the surgery was down in the Carolinas, Charlotte. I saw him on a flight to Charlotte. So So that's maybe he was going to Charlotte for that reason. He transferred in from Kentucky before last year. I think he's a guy that's going to feel if he is fully healthy and can make an impact as a depth piece on this line, will feel like kind of a new guy to Orange fans because he was here last year, but was hurt. And I think he's definitely going to compete for one of those spots.
And some people end up playing hurt and still getting through, which is the next guy you have listed there, and that's Cody Hornsby.
Yeah, he comes in from Grambling State, 6'3", 315 pounds. Played the bulk of last year, which is something I don't even know if I realized, with a broken hand. So another depth piece for sure. Hopefully his hand is healed and he can, be healthy this year.
And then you have Josh Iloa, senior, second-team center in the spring game. He was fighting for that spot with John Ray Reed last fall camp, primarily used on special teams. And, again, he's been around for a few years, and he knows this program. Keeping it moving. Lysander Moalo, I believe that's how we pronounce his name. He's one of those truly new names for us. Because he was second-team left guard spring game, so they clearly think highly of him. 6'6", 350. Holy moly. He's Samoan, redshirt junior, redshirted last year, and then before that he was at Navarro College, which if you were a fan of the show Cheer on Netflix, absolute awesome show. So that was a small JUCO down in Texas, so that was pretty cool. Want to keep going with the list?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to say that this whole entire depth chart we're going through here is pretty much all 300 pounds or right below 295. So that's what you like to see.
That's what you like to see
on your lines. Anyways, Josh Miller, he's a redshirt freshman. He was we saw him a little bit in the spring game. He redshirted. He interests me out of everyone coming in because he redshirted his freshman year at Georgia before coming over, recruited by Fran Brown with Brown's move to Syracuse. He was ranked the 14th best prospect in the state out of high school. He's from Virginia. And I think definitely is a guy that could be in competition for one of those tackle spots with Enrique and Demetrius Witherspoon. I mean, I think he didn't really get a chance to show what he's capable of at Georgia. So I think if he gets a chance up here at Syracuse, definitely a guy to watch.
It's a growing trend with the Georgia guys to keep a real eye on them, and they were at Georgia for a reason.
Absolutely.
Right? And now they're coming here to be with Fran Brown. So Miller, absolutely keep an eye on. Second team left tackle in the spring game. Trevion Mack, redshirt freshman. He was on the second team right tackle in the spring game. Minnesota native. He's one of those dudes that's put in the work, redshirting, practice squad, you name it. But we'll see how he's able to make a move. Want to hit the next few?
Yeah, Joe Cruz, he's a redshirt sophomore. He actually started 3 games last year. Saw time in all 12 of them, but started 3 games after he redshirted the year prior. He did miss the bowl game due to an injury. He allowed 0 sacks in 208 snaps, with the majority of his time coming at left guard. So I think he's definitely a good depth piece as well.
Nice. And then Willie Goodacre, what do you got on him? Freshman. Great name, by the way.
So here's
I
where
love Willie Goodacre.
I know, that's a great name. Here's where we get into there's a few of these freshmen that I think are really, really interesting. Goodacre is another big guy, 6'5", 300 pounds. He was a 3-star out of Texas. He chose Syracuse. He had a bunch of Big Ten offers, but I think it really came down to the wire with him and Kansas and Syracuse. Picked the Orange. One of the top interior offensive linemen in Texas, which is really saying something when you think about the level of high school talent in Texas. He was first team All-State. And he actually committed to Syracuse last summer under Dino Babers and reaffirmed that this winter with Fran Brown. But I'm excited to see what he can grow into. Obviously, just a freshman right now, but I think like I said, any talent that really sticks out in Texas in high school, I think really has a good chance to make an impact in college.
Big time. And keeping the list going, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Noah Rosahack?
I think.
Rosahack. But Jim Thorpe, PA native. So you got that Northeast PA roots in there. Cool spot. Had offers from Virginia Tech, JMU, Coastal Carolina. Then to keep the list going, Travis Brown Jr. and Vito Savchenko. I think I nailed that.
Yeah. So some freshmen that we'll probably get to know a little bit more in years to come.
Maybe some redshirting. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should get into the departures because there are some guys that I think fans will know that aren't with us anymore. So Joe Moore, first.
They're not dead, by the way.
No, Sorry, that did sound like I was saying they moved on. That's not what happened. Joe Moore is out of here. He transferred to Arkansas for his last year of eligibility. He was injured most of last year after he transferred in from Rhode Island, but no more Joe Moore and no more Kalen Ellis, which is something I had to double check today. That was one of those for me. I was like, oh yeah, no more Kalen Ellis.
I know. And Joe Moore was one of those dudes that really seemed like he was going to be a big part of that offense, right? And then the spring game rolls around and he's just in his jersey and it's like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And, but it must have just, if I had to assume it was one of those deals where didn't get that start and he's like, I want to go and get serious playing time right away.
He's from Tennessee too. Maybe get a little closer to home.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
Can't complain with that. And then Chris Bleish declared for the NFL draft. This dude he was in college forever. He was at Florida and then ended up finally at Syracuse, and he'll be missed. He was one of those consistent names with the new coaching staff. It felt like year in and year out that really enjoyed what he was able to do. So you have your final point here. Hit me with it.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I need to write down my final point so I don't forget it
I'm
when we
ready
inevitably
for it.
get into this conversation. So, yeah, it's what I said at the beginning. I think as a whole, this is one of the more experienced, older position groups on this team. And I think it really has the potential to be stronger last year with guys coming back from injury, a good amount of depth. And I even really do like some of the freshmen they've brought in. I think on your lines, O-line, D-line, you just can never have too much depth. And I think this group has, frankly, a lot more depth than we've seen in years past, which is something that they will need to protect Kyle McCord.
And the offensive line was my big question mark. I remember as we went into week one, and it's probably going to be my big question mark again because it's one of those you just don't know for sure until you really start to see them out there. And this year, more than any other year, it is so vital that they perform. And I have faith they can do it, and it's good, but they're going to have to move quick in terms, again, finding that gelling.
And I think that's something that Fran Brown and his coaching staff have to know, right? You're bringing in, even with all the talk of Kyle McCord isn't committing to Syracuse unless he feels confident that he's going to have protection. So they feel good about this group, and I hope that we see that transpire on the field.
Rachel, final thoughts.
Of course I do. This is a sidebar, but I always wanted to be a left tackle, so this is a really exciting conversation for me. I actually started a petition in high school that I wanted to join the football team as a left tackle. That did not take hold.
Let's dive into that real quick.
Let's
Hold
unpack.
on. Let's we're going to pause what you were about to go. You wanted to be a left tackle.
Yeah, I thought it was so cool.
I mean, clearly your size just fits the frame perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, my 5'3", I would call it a narrow frame. That's what I'm going to go
How
with.
did the petitioning go?
I had some unserious signs, but it was never anything that my athletic director decided that he wanted to take seriously.
Was it Rachel Culver for left tackle?
Something like that, yeah. I remember going around my tech class as everyone's like operating those little saws that you use in tech classes, and I was just like, hey, you want to sign this?
Now, why, can I ask, was it left tackle? Like, what piqued your interest on left tackle?
You ever seen
You
ever seen The Blind Side, Ashley?
I love The Blind Side.
So I grew up and I was like, Michael Orr is sick. I was like, I want to protect like left side, strong side. No.
That's so funny.
But
That's incredible.
If Fran Brown, if you're interested, I don't know where my eligibility stands, but I would like to give it a shot.
Are you still taking walk-ons?
Yeah, I can't make any promises, but boy, I will be a great teammate.
I love that. It's just there for the vibes.
Great content.
Morale. And you're going to be like an offensive line like fan now. Like people are going to be a big, like O-linemen are going to be a big fan of you. Like there's probably an O-line coach at some program here in upstate New York that would take a grad assistant.
Probably, but
position.
I don't know if I'm the one that's qualified to do it.
You just want to play. You don't want to coach.
It's the whole thing, Tommy. It's like playing basketball all my life. Like as a point guard, I always said like I'm a center in a point guard's body. Like I just want that sense of physicality that I feel like you get down on the block and then you get on the O-line.
I feel that.
You're giving the O-line a lot of love, and I love to see that because the trenches, they don't get a lot of love.
They need the love. Yeah. And that's what we're doing here today.
Yeah.
Yeah. O-line down.
Yeah.
Good ep. And again, it's very notesy compared to some of our normal conversational episodes, but that's the nature of what we're doing, and people seem to be enjoying it. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Any position group you want to hit next week?
I really want to talk about the running backs. I say this every week, but
You're ready
I'm
for it?
excited to talk about the running backs. Yeah.
All right, let's.
We'll try.
We're gonna plan to make running backs happen next week. I think that's a super exciting position.
Yeah.
Because you have a guy named LaQuinn Allen in there.
Yes.
You have a new guy named Will Nixon in there.
Yeah.
And then you have the freshman, Justin Willis.
The
that
freshman of the spring, really.
could be the ceiling for that dude. We're gonna get into it.
Yeah.
We're gonna hold.
Ashley just wants to run. I'll make sure you get the handoff clean.
I think I would be on a football team. I'd be a running back.
Definitely.
Maybe that's why yeah.
You ran track, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you'd be Benny the Jet.
Powder Puff in high school, I was a running back star.
That's
I just
awesome.
want everyone to know that.
Yeah, I was a powder puff cheerleader. I was a flyer. I was really small.
No way.
Yeah.
Mommy.
Yeah, I was really small. Sophomore year, I did it. They tossed me up. I could do.
Did you do a flip?
No, I was scared to death.
Yeah.
But I went up and it was in the air and came down. We tried a 360 once and crashed in everyone. It was a mess. The powder puff was
No
fun.
injuries to report on, though? You're good?
No, we were good.
Good.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
That's our show. Ashley Wenskoski, Tommy Sladek, Rachel Culver. We're out of here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Make sure you are liking and subscribing. Later.